up, folks? It has been a while since I've made a video, but I'm back today. So I was having a conversation with a few people the other night, and we started to discuss the role of luck, and just the role of luck in pretty much just life in general, but a little bit more specifically the role of luck when it comes to success. And I just finished this book, The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. And to kind of start this conversation off, I wanted to discuss kind of two concepts he talks about in the book. So he has something called Mediocristan, and then he has something he calls Extremistan. And not Mediocristan, it's not named that in the sense of really derived from the word mediocre. But anyways, Mediocristan, when it comes to, if we're talking about careers, is something where the entire population of that thing, or if whatever we're talking about is discussed in kind of like a pie, like talking about the sum of the whole, Mediocristan is kind of defined as everything that is made up of Mediocristan has kind of an equal share of the parts, where Extremistan is not very equality driven at all. So there's like a few people or a few things that represent a good portion of the whole. So if we're talking about careers, Mediocristan would be described as kind of careers and jobs where you're essentially just trading your time for money, and there's not really a few people representing the entire portion of the population. It's kind of everyone kind of balances each other out. So if you can take something in regards to like height or weight. If you take up like a thousand males and just random males, 1,000 random people, put them all together, one person's excessive weight is not going to dramatically affect the average of the 1,000 people. You're going to get roughly, the average is going to roughly stay the same. So you're not going to have like one person that weighs 1 pound and another person that weighs 1,000 pounds, because that's just not how that's just not how weight works. So that would be kind of an example of Mediocristan. And some different careers in regards to Mediocristan would be like plumbing, electrician, just typical like factory jobs. Kind of what I do as a trainer, as a strength and conditioning coach, for the most part. I put in an hour to train somebody and I get some amount of money in return. You're probably not seeing any personal trainers making $1,000 on 1 hour of training. And careers in regards to Extremistan are more kind of your more like creative careers, writing, acting, professional sports, professional athletes, really. It's kind of the reason why LeBron James makes a shit ton of money, but somebody like the sixth man off the bench is making significantly less. And just like acting, you have a few select actors that represent like the overall, like that occupy a huge portion of the overall wealth of actors. And same thing with writing. You have like your New York Times bestsellers make up an insane portion of the total amount of wealth produced by book selling each year. So you have basically a few prominent authors, a few prominent actors that make up the entire or like their wealth or the money they receive, their fame is disproportionate to everyone else in that career. So think about all the people that are writing books, writing short stories that you never hear about or never will hear about, and think about all the people that have written like 10 books and they could put out a book tomorrow and they know it's going to sell a million copies. Just there's a small portion of people that occupy just a huge portion of that landscape. So, and this is kind of where the role of luck plays in. So, and something kind of where when you're talking Mediocristan, and again, these are kind of concepts that Nassim Taleb kind of came up with and conceptualizes. When you're talking about mediocrity, there's not like a huge portion of luck to involve. So if I wanted to be an electrician, I just had to practice to become an electrician. I actually don't know the path, like the real path to become one. And then I work hard and I can become a pretty good electrician. But there's not anyone, like, you don't go on Instagram and find like a bunch of electricians with 1 million followers. So mediocre stand, there's not a huge rule of luck, but extremist stand, there is. So how many people are trying to become actors these days? How many people are trying to write books? A shit ton of people. And I would like to write a book one day. But say I wanted to become an actor, or I wanted to write a book. I'm filled with millions and millions of other people writing books, and really there's like 10 to 20% of writers that occupy like the entire portion of like sales of books. But so think about all the people writing, or take acting, all the people trying to become an actor or are acting, that are actually very skilled and are just really good at writing or really good at acting, but have never seen the recognition, or even have gotten the big stepping stone of opportunity to become just hugely successful. So really, when it comes to, and kind of side conversation, I think luck is so driven in just everybody's life. I think pretty much everything comes down to luck, just based on my thoughts of free will. Like, you're not born who you are, you're not born, you didn't get to pick your parents, you didn't get to pick your genes, your environment you grew up in, and kind of like the physics of the world are kind of always operating in the background, but we just kind of think that we are completely in control of our destiny. While that might be a useful way to think to help set you up for good opportunities and success, I don't think that's kind of the reality at the works. So when you have to think about like people, when we look up to like the people we kind of aspire to be, that are like some of the best in our fields, or the people we look up to that have just reached the kind of the epitome of success, and we think, man, they worked. The initial way to think is like, man, they worked really hard to get there, and they were kind of put through the ringer. They faced some very tough times, and they came out of those stronger and worked really hard, and now that's the reason for their success. That's the reason why they are where they are. But I encourage you and challenge you to think how much luck really has to do with it. So, did they just meet the right person at the right time? Did their opportunity they just kind of get lucky with an opportunity and they made the right impression to the right person? Or their ideas just happened to come at a time when most people were thriving for that kind of, for those kind of ideas? I've been talking to a few people about CrossFit and the huge controversy going on with Greg Glassman, and how he basically, a bunch of people were moving their affiliate to CrossFit, and him stepping down as CEO, which isn't going to change much at all, because he's still getting paid, but that's another conversation. So they got me thinking about CrossFit, and I was talking to some people about CrossFit, and I was thinking, like, so people, like, gyms are removing their CrossFit affiliate, but it's not going to actually change anything about their gym. It's not going to change the way they do things at all. It's literally just changing part of their name. They're taking the branding away from their gym. So it got me thinking, like, what is CrossFit really? Like, is it really a way of training? Because a bunch of CrossFit gyms train people differently, and really it's just a brand. So I was just like, what is CrossFit? And CrossFit has become huge, and the time it blew up, it just, of course I'm kind of backwards rationalizing this, but the time it blew up, when it got really big, kind of came out of nowhere, was a time when kind of social media was growing, and it was a time when there wasn't much discussion about like health and fitness, more specifically fitness and strength training in general. You had like your strength training for athletes, like your high school, college athletes, and then you just had training for people that just kind of wanted to be healthier and fit, and it all the training was kind of the same thing. It was kind of like very machine oriented. Like today we're going to do chest and triceps, tomorrow we're going to do back and biceps, we're going to do mostly machines, and you're going to get a good sweat, you're going to get a good pump, and that's going to be that. And CrossFit came along, and I think this is where the role of luck comes in. I think it just came along at the perfect time where people were just kind of hungry for something else, and I don't think they even knew it. So CrossFit comes along and they're like, we've got functional fitness, our exercises are functional, you're over there doing your machine workout, you're not going to get any mobility, that's not functional at all. I'm over here doing bar over burpees and power clean thrusters, which is super functional for daily life, and that's how I'm going to thrive, and that's why my workout is better than yours. So CrossFit kind of brought the term like functional training into like social media that was growing big at the time, and waboom, CrossFit just became huge. And again, like so I think if CrossFit didn't happen, say the state of affairs is kind of very similar, like this a made up scenario. Say we are where we're at right now, CrossFit never existed, but we're still kind of in the same state of affairs. Say CrossFit happens now, I don't think it's going to get big at all, because we're already past where that started. We're actually already talking and thinking way past CrossFit. We're already kind of past the functional movement days, and most people are starting to talk about kind of more better ideas, or just even more ideas in general when it comes to strength training, fitness, health. The conversation has just grown so big that if you stuck CrossFit in the midst now and it just started, I don't think it would become big at all. So that's where I come back to the role of luck. Like how much of your success, where you're at, is meeting the right people at the right time, just having an idea that just is lucky enough that the masses are hungry for it at that time. And like, just think of the easiest way to think about it is like we see all these people super successful, super famous, have all this money, and we think that's how, like we think they're representing such a huge population, but really think about how many other people did the exact same things as them, worked just as hard, maybe harder, put in just as much work, maybe more work. Think of all the huge amounts of people that really literally stuck to the same thing and didn't get the opportunity, didn't get the chance, and aren't as big. Like think of all the great writers and actors that just will never reach success just because they didn't have just the perfect scenario or the opportunity that came to them. So that I think we have to think about that, and I don't think we typically so that's why I think typical kind of life advice is kind of stupid, because how many people are taking life advice from people that are super successful and they're not getting anywhere from it, even though they're really following it, really working hard, but just the opportunities never arise. They might still see some success, but not like the huge success that I kind of mentioned earlier, that a few people are occupying just kind of the huge portion of the landscape. So hope this makes sense, and I think you can really start to see it everywhere. So, and then going back to the book, because when Nassim Taleb first mentions Mediocristan and Extremistan, he talks about advice he got from a friend saying, don't pick a career where you're just kind of trading your time for money, because it's not going to yield tremendous results. Like you're just going to kind of stay on the beaten and narrow path, and you're restricting yourself to Mediocristan. And as he got to thinking about these ideas, he thought, if I were to give somebody advice, I would tell them to choose a career in Mediocristan, because it's less prone to the huge disruption of Extremistan. There's a much less role of luck in Mediocristan, and it's essentially a much safer path. Whereas you can in Extremistan, it's kind of a luxurious and kind of this fanciful idea like, oh, I'm going to become a YouTuber like all these guys. That's just a kind of a weird example, but you could work 10 years writing a book, reading and writing every single day, and then nothing will come of it because you have a few select individuals occupying a huge portion of the landscape, and that's almost just kind of like multiplying. And especially with the way technology is these days, that's going to kind of magnify even further. So Extremistan, there's just the role of luck involved is so much higher, and there's just a much less of a chance at you becoming one of the few people occupying a huge portion of the landscape. So that's where I'll leave it today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you next time for something else.